Hi, this is Steve Gillmor, and this is the Gillmor Gang. Welcome. Today yesterday actually we had an interesting time down at the new Facebook headquarters. There was some interesting announcements as Facebook slowly trudges toward overhauling their environment. And one of the first things that was announced was our guest's elevation to an actual title and responsibilities. Welcome, Brett Taylor.
Thanks for having me.
So what's your job? And
I'm the director of products for the Facebook platform. So I work in product management here and currently manage the platform product specifically. So that's Facebook Connect and the platform on Facebook.com, the Canvas pages and other integration points on Facebook.com.
Okay. Also, we'll get back to that in a second. Also joining us is the infamous Robert Scoble.
Hey, what's up?
Hi, Robert.
Hey, how are you doing, Brett? Congrats.
Thank you.
And someone who was also at the event yesterday, Kevin Marks.
Hey there.
Hey, Kevin.
I'll see you again, Brett.
All right. So getting back to what was announced yesterday, can you sort of summarize it?
So we basically published a 6-month roadmap for our plans for the Facebook platform. Obviously, one of the complaints we had gotten from developers in the past that lots of businesses are building their business on top of our platform, and they want to plan for the next 6 to 12 months for their businesses, but they weren't aware what changes we were going to make to our platform, and it was very difficult for them to do that planning. So we sort of herded the cats internally to try to write out specifically what our plans are for the next 6 months. So that was probably the most significant thing. The central parts of the things we were changing some of the communication channels available to developers on Facebook.com, and we're doing some UI revisions to Facebook.com that will impact Facebook apps. And then we announced a couple of new products and new initiatives that we're doing for developers, like the Open Graph API.
Well, the Open Graph API, I think, is the most interesting part of this, I think, for not only developers but users. But before we go there, how much of the decisions or the process of starting to collapse a number of different channels, as it was put, into one of 3 bins, email or the inbox, the stream, and I forget what the third one was. How much of that were you involved with, since you coming over from FriendFeed?
I was fairly involved. Obviously, a lot of it was sort of in the works when I got here, and some of it, I was involved with. I think the perspective that I brought was largely of an external developer. I was a developer on the platform until very recently. And the main perspective I brought was that I felt one of the things that the platform could most use improvement in is simplicity. A lot of competing platforms like friend feeds and like Twitter's didn't provide all the functionality of the Facebook platform, but also were a little easier for new developers to understand. And so simplifying the channels is something I'm very supportive of, because I really do think as a new developer, the channels that are available, you mentioned the stream, the Facebook inbox, and now we're providing access to user email addresses as well. They're really easy for new developers to understand, so I think it's going to lead to a much easier developer experience and a much better user experience in the end.
But Brett, does that new functionality give access to my friends' email addresses?
No,
so could I?
Okay, it's a much more concrete and limited in scope feature.
No, Robert, you have to
Facebook Connect site and you click Connect, and that dialog that says, do you want to connect with this site? There will, if the developer asks for it, there will be a checkbox there that says, do you want to also provide this Connect site with your email address? And it only provides your email address, and it's very clear at the time that you're doing it that this action is being taken. So it's not something that you'll be aware of it when it happens, and it's only your email address provided to a specific application.
Okay, so you still can't build an app that would, bring my email addresses of my friends into Outlook or into Gmail or something like that.
Um, right now, that's currently not possible. I think it's something we're really interested in. I think it's possibly the most complex and most interesting part of our platform and other platforms like it. It turns out that I was talking a little bit to Kevin about this yesterday.
Yeah.
Facebook has a lot of users, and I mean, and
That's an understatement.
yeah, and so what's interesting is when thinking about infrastructure problems at Facebook and Google, problems that are insignificant for smaller companies are significant here. So when you're comparing something that takes 10 nanoseconds versus 5 nanoseconds, for most startups, it's like, well, you're measuring it in nanoseconds, so who cares? Just choose whichever's most convenient. Well, at Facebook and Google, you multiply that by 10 trillion because of the number of requests per second you get, and all of a sudden that becomes a significant technical decision. Well, I think with user interface problems, the number and widely varying technical awareness of Facebook users makes user interface problems sort of similarly complex. As much as I think it's worthwhile that, it'd be nice if you could, import your Facebook friends' phone numbers into your phone, providing that functionality also means that one of your friends who might not be so technically aware might accidentally give up your phone number to a malicious application. And so, we're struggling with this like sort of somewhat conflicting desires to provide that functionality to developers, but also protect our users from applications that aren't as aren't as well-meaning as say Gmail. So it's something that I think we're committed to in spirit, but I don't want to like understate the complexity of actually doing it. And I don't think we really have like solutions for a lot of those problems in our head. And so right now, I do think we're making the correct decision of sort of erring on the side of protecting our users' privacy. But it doesn't mean we're not committed to providing that in the future if we can figure out a way that like protects our users' privacy in addition to providing the functionality to developers.
So, I mean, I think there's a bunch of interesting stuff there about understanding that there are different classes of application. And we had a little chat about this yesterday. It'd be great to talk about it here. And you've sort of hinted towards that yesterday by separating out the games from the rest of the apps, but they still have the same privileges. But there are different kinds of applications that can ask for different kinds of things. So if I'm using a client like Seismic to log into Facebook that can read and write my entire feed and post and do a lot more, at the moment I get 4 or 5 different auth boxes I have to go through to say yes, 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 you can do that.
Yeah.
Whereas conversely, there are things like the ACLU quiz app that shows that even a simple quiz app can read that I install can read all my friends' political affiliations and things like that. So there's sort of Facebook has basically up to now had this one-size-fits-all privacy model broadly, and I think you probably now have enough applications to sort of do some interesting stats across that and say, what are the different kinds of apps? What are the different classes of these? And can we actually segment these into something interesting? Is that something you're looking at?
Absolutely. One of the things we're actively working on internally is providing more granular access control at the time that you connect with an application on the web or install an application on Facebook.com. And what I think so we are actively working on that so that you can not authorize access to your friend's data if you just want to, essentially log into a website, but you're not committed to that particular aspect of the application. Or furthermore, provide more access for applications you trust deeply. I think we're working through right now the user interface issues associated with that. The wrong way to do it is a dialog box with 28 checkboxes of all the things you want to provide access to. And there is a right way, and we're figuring out what that balance is. There are sort of buckets these types of privacy settings into something that I think end users can understand well. But we're actively working on it, and as a side effect of that project, we hope that we can reduce the number of dialog boxes to 1 or 2 or something very reasonable. I've experienced the sequence of dialog boxes that you're referring to, and it's a really bad user experience. So we're definitely working on fixing that.
Right. I mean, that was something. Well, there's sort of 2 aspects to this. Something that we found when we were doing the OpenID OAuth hybrid stuff, which I think Facebook now calls, and I think Plaxo and Joe from Plaxo and Eric from Google were iterating on that, and they found that every option you added increased the number of people who just cancelled out of the whole thing, because if you try and make them make a choice, they give up.
Yeah.
But conversely, the other effect I've seen with this and in other situations is if you make people click two boxes on their way to something, they just click them anyway, because often without even reading them, because there's a task they want to achieve and they have to work through that. So I think we're going to have to come up with some interesting, it needs to be a one-click thing to start with. One of the nice things about OAuth, and this is where I push you to implement OAuth, and you say maybe, but is that because you're giving away a token that knows what the app is and what the context you've asked for it in, you can actually change its permissions over time.
Yeah.
So that you're giving this app a token, you can later say, actually, no, I don't want that to have my email address, or okay, I trust it now, it can have my email address, it can have my friend's phone number, or whatever. And the permission, because it's not bound to a username password login, you haven't given away the whole thing. I think that's going to give us some more possibilities in future. So it may let us avoid. There's a thing that Twitter apps do, a lot of them, where you do the OAuth thing, and they say we want the ability to tweet on your behalf, and then they send a tweet saying I just signed up with Twitter app X, and you think, you bastard, I didn't ask you to do that.
Yeah.
And it would be nice if you could spot, catch those before they go out. And Facebook has that problem in spades. There's all kinds of battles that you've been having with some of the app developers who've behaved that way.
Yeah. Well, so first of all, Facebook authorization is also revocable after the fact. So there is if you click on your applications link on facebook.com, you can revoke any application that you no longer. I think supporting OAuth is a good idea, and I can't really speak to when or if we'll do that, but I think that for practical purposes, Facebook's authorization scheme and OAuth map pretty well to each other, and so it's not, it wouldn't be a huge technical feat to do so, and it's something that we've talked about. But it is, the complexity of just moving from one system to another is very large. So, I'm not sure whether we'll do it, but it's something we've talked about. I think that I agree with you. I think that offers some possibilities, and I do think that basically you want to make it really easy to start using the application, but you also want to make it clear to users the consequences of their actions. And I think there's an inherent tension between those two things, and so. I think we're effectively just going to iterate on this, and I think that the dialog box where a user can provide their email address to an application, which I referred to earlier, that's one place where we've done a few experiments already, and I think we reached a place that we think we reached sort of that happy middle ground between ease of use and awareness. But I think we're going to iterate on all of these things, and that's the only real way to do it.
Jumping up the stack a little bit, this is certainly of interest to developers, but there are also implications of these changes for users and for entrepreneurs who are trying to bolt onto the platform, not necessarily at the technical level, but at the implications for competing with Twitter and so on. So if we characterize Facebook's environment as a series of phases, maybe starting with Beacon and then moving to Connect in its early iterations. We'll forget the first aborted attempt at it. And then, perhaps there was a third phase in between then and now. But what do you see this phase as representing at a sort of an Uber level?
So one thing is that we are focusing a great deal more on Facebook Connect. At a high level, the Facebook platform is a platform for identity. I think, especially with some of the changes we're making with yesterday's announcement, by far the best authentication and authorization system for a website to use, just as a simple identity system. And then on top of that identity system, we want to provide services for distribution and sharing, and also for personalization. And so I think the first iteration of the Facebook platform was largely applications that ran within Facebook.com and really interacted with your Facebook profile at sort of a user interface level. I think in the future, our hope is that you sort of bring your Facebook identity with you around the web, so that when you're using sites like Yelp or Dig, you can have it personalized based on your social network, and you can also share your activity on those sites back into Facebook, so that your friends can sort of share that and make those sites more social than they are today. And so I think that's really one sort of a directional change we've made is that we really are excited about. So I'm some echo there, but
Yeah, so yeah, I think you're just bandwidth challenged at the second.
I have other. Anyway, so I think we are really excited about Connect in particular, and over time, I'm hoping that users, when they think of Facebook as a platform, they really think of it all over the web rather than something that exists within a Canvas page on Facebook.com primarily. Um, and so that's probably one of the more significant sort of strategic shifts we've been making. That said, we are really still focused on apps running within Facebook.com. Obviously, I think the games dashboard, which you referenced earlier, is like one clear way that we are trying to really promote the most popular games on Facebook.com. But I think that over the next year, one of my main metrics for success is how many sites adopt Connect, and how many sites does adopting Connect really fundamentally change their business and make their business work better.
Right. So that leads into the Open Graph API fairly directly.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you say that this is going to be much in the same way that when Google opened the rest of the web to Googleist technologies with AdSense, that it really fundamentally changed the platform? Don't you think this is going to have the same effect?
I hope so. I think that, as I said, it is because this was a part of our 6-month roadmap. I do think that it's not entirely, concretely defined yet. So I think that there is a lot of the devil's in the details, a lot of these things, but I am really excited about it. At a high level, for those listeners who haven't heard much about it, the Open Graph API basically means that any page on the web can be a node in Facebook's graph. And what that means is you can go to any page on the web that's enabled it, and you can fan that page, and it will show up on your profile, just like a Facebook page does. It can publish updates to your stream, and it can show up in search results if you're searching for something named like that page, and enough of your friends are connected to it, just like Facebook pages today. I'm really excited about it because I think that, as we talk about Facebook and Facebook Connect as really a platform for identity, having the things you're connected to live around the web rather than living just on Facebook.com is completely in that spirit. And I think it's offers really exciting opportunities for developers to integrate with Facebook in a very lightweight way and still control your brand and your user experience.
Robert, you were going to jump in?
No.
I know,
I'm
that's why
excited
I'm
by
asking
this
you to.
future, though. Huffington Post is using Facebook Connect and getting a lot of traffic and building a unique experience for their users.
Yeah, it's really I think that's really been also one of our focuses. I think we want to make it easier to adopt Connect, and also easier, and it's offer a clear path for Connect. Really improving your business. I think that right now, just putting a Connect button on your site isn't going to change your business overnight. So one of the things we're going to focus on is just providing a better template for how to implement Connect, so you get all the benefits of the distribution of virality, increase the sign up rates, and decrease drop off, as Kevin was referring to earlier. So we have a lot of work to do there, but I'm really excited about it because those partners who have implemented it and put some thought into it have really seen a huge benefit from doing so.
So is the Open Graph API effectively going to let you read feeds from the rest of the web in Facebook? That seemed to be what you're implying by saying I can post stuff from the web into my
I can't really say what it will or will not do, because we have some sketches.
Still working out what it is.
I don't really want to, it's a little early to say what, the specifics of what it will do. I will say, though, it's less focused on feeds necessarily than identity. I think that really, the Facebook stream is about sharing, and it's a little more transient. It's what's going on right now. And your profile is really about who you are and who you're connected to. And I think that the one goal of the Graph API is to really extend the identity component. We do provide tools for sites to share into the stream already. And the Graph API is sort of a parallel to that in the profile. It's a way for you to add stuff to your profile and add connections that exist all around the web. So for example, you might be connected to a cause on Causes, and that's sort of a more permanent connection that goes on your profile versus, say, sharing a blog post from Scobalizer, which is something that goes into the stream and is more transient.
Right. No. Well, what I was getting at is that your existing
Okay.
Connect lets me on your site share your story into my feed. It doesn't let your site share a story into my feed directly, which you seem to be implying I could subscribe to, Scobalizer.com or whatever, and have his post show up in my feed in the same way they do in friend feed. That seemed to be something of what you were getting at there.
I think, and again, the implementation details are still being, worked out, but I think that that's like definitely one of the goals, that that
Okay.
relationship that you have on Scobalizer.com can be really transparently interchanged between Facebook and Scobalizer.
Right, but
One thing,
hang on a
Brad,
second. Let me
okay.
just nail this down. Much in the same way that when you made the decision at FriendFeed to move to a more real time and then completely real time architecture, you may not have had any idea about what the details of the implementation were going to be 3 months, 6 months out, but you sure did know that it was going to be a big deal. So,
Yeah.
don't you have the same sense here?
I do. I really think that, to me, I really like the idea that Facebook is sort of the social infrastructure on which a lot of these sites can get distribution and personalization, because it's so difficult to build out that infrastructure. And so to me, this is just a way of making it so when I'm browsing around the web, I'm sort of like taking my Facebook identity with me. So I do think this is going to be a really huge deal if we do it right. And so really what I'm focusing on right now is just the product manager and me just trying to help work with the engineering team and trying to spec out exactly what that looks like and make it really easy for developers to adopt.
Is it going to have a real time component?
Yeah, I don't really think we're still working on the details, so it's probably a little early to talk about that
What
stuff.
about the IM functionality? That wasn't really mentioned in the roll up into the inbox. It seems like much at the event yesterday. The wall characteristics seem to be sort of being left alone, sort of as a legacy, and IM wasn't even mentioned. But it seems like there's going to be a collision between those forms, and that's why I ask you about the real-time aspect of it. I mean, this is going to so much of our identity these days is mapped to real time that it seems like it's a fundamental thing, and it seemed odd to me that IM wasn't even discussed.
So initially, the IM functionality won't change, and it will still exist. There's relatively limited scope through which developers can interact with IM. There is a real-time invitation API for games in particular, but right now, as you mentioned, those are somewhat separate experiences on Facebook.com. I think it's safe to say that we are iterating a lot on our user interface over the next few months. Some of the mocks for those new UIs were included in the presentation and on the roadmap yesterday. But it's probably like there's a lot of people thinking about these problems, and probably not my place to say where it will end up. But I, obviously, I'm really excited about real time, as you know. So I think we'll end up in a pretty good spot. But I can't really say what that will be.
Robert?
Brett, there seems to be a difference between metadata that you put into the system, like I would put on my profile page. I tell people I'm a liberal Democrat that's 44 years old, that's male, etc. Versus what's going on right now is Twitter's lists are turning on for everybody, and everybody's building lists. That's metadata that's being built by other people about you, sort of like Flickr tagging is happening.
Yeah.
Do you see in the API an ability for us to build new kinds of metadata that are not just controlled about you, controlled by you, the user?
Yeah, no, I think that's a really interesting thing. And actually, Facebook, I think, has probably the most prominent form of this on the web with photo tagging. The photo tags on Facebook are probably my favorite part of the site. I know the favorite part of a lot of people. It's clicking on photos of Robert on Facebook is one of the coolest things, just because like it's from all these people who I've never necessarily met, but I'm looking at just photos of that person. So I think it's something specifically with our graph that we're really interested in is helping you build out your identity and having people in your social network help build out your network, your identity, whether it's tagging you in posts or tagging you in photos.
Yep.
So I think that's a really, really great thing. And I hope that the work we're doing on Facebook.com and also with Open Graph API will definitely enable that functionality.
where do you see us in this world? Are we 10% done with the social graph? Are we 50% done? Are we getting close to having it built out? What other kinds of metadata do you think people are going to need about us?
Well, I think for me, it just comes down to user experience. The reason I love the photo tagging functionality on Facebook is because I'm sort of I get to sort of really get a lens into my friend's life from sort of my extended social network, people that I don't necessarily know personally, but who also are connected through my friend. And I think in that sense, we're not really there yet because that only really works well for photos today. But there's a whole bunch of other aspects of what I do online, whether it's interacting with the source code projects I interact with on github.com, or if I'm into skateboarding, there's like a whole wealth of things in that world that is not captured by Facebook very well. Or if I'm into movies, and there's a bunch of Facebook applications today that fall into all these verticals, whether it's movies or entertainment or technical things. And I really hope that with things like the Open Graph API, a lot of those verticals that I'm personally passionate about but don't necessarily make sense for Facebook to do can really be built out so that when I go to facebook.com and I'm looking at someone's profile, I can see what truly represents them, even if that content or those objects in the graph are hosted elsewhere.
Is it possible that...
Didn't you have that with profile boxes?
What? Sorry, go ahead.
Didn't you have that with profile boxes and then took it away again? I mean, the first iteration of apps on Facebook was about putting boxes on the profile from third parties, and that sort of they vanished off into a sort of hidden tab that nobody finds anymore.
Yeah, I think that was probably generally regarded as like not the most elegant way to do what I'm talking about. It tended to be more about bling than actual connections, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, well, that was the kind of MySpace, hangover.
Yeah, so I think it's more important to know like what say like causes I'm connected to than it is to like provide a canvas on which lots of different developers can put relatively garish things on people's profiles. It made it a little difficult to navigate the site, and so. I think we want to provide that functionality, but in a way that provides value to our users and developers. The other thing is that, I think there's a lot of details to be worked out with the Open Graph API, but one problem with profile boxes is that they were silos, meaning they were, whoever provided the profile box knew what was in it, but no other developers, and Facebook itself didn't actually know what was represented in that box. And hopefully with something like the Open Graph API, that data can flow more freely between applications, which I think is really important. So, applications can build on each other as opposed to just sort of existing in these little silos.
Oh, well, that's a good opening for, one of the things that currently doesn't work very well or isn't represented by the Facebook space is friend feed. So can you see friend feed being integrated using the Open Graph API?
Yeah, I mean, I actually do think that that's like an interesting idea. I think that one thing is friend feed was particularly focused on sort of the communication channels and the particular style of communication on the site. And my hope is that as working on the platform, the reason I was really excited about working on it is expanding it to the point that applications like friend feed could really work well within it. And if the platform that we're working on right now, the iteration of the platform we're working on right now existed when FriendFeed started, FriendFeed would have been much more successful and much more widespread than it was. And so really to me, like, that's one of the things I always keep in my head is, as a recent entrepreneur, what is the platform that would have really driven, my business to the next level? And so, I do think that we're going in that right direction.
So that's, what I would bring the activity stream stuff up there, because Facebook's already generating those, which is great, and taking part in that standardization group. But we're also, the photographs one is a great example where exporting the feed of taggings in photographs is useful. But if you can actually draw the ones in from Flickr that launched that last week, and from iPhoto, and from the other sites, and MySpace even.
Yeah,
that
the aggregation
have
model.
photo tagging, drawing that back in and saying, oh right, here's here's the photos that Kevin posted at Flickr that are tagged with Robert Scoble or whatever. That would still be interesting. And it gets us, there's some complications there because we've got to map the identities from one space to another. But the fact that we've got a common data format for moving that around is very hopeful. Having seen what you had to do with Friendly for that. Yeah.
I think that's a very promising thing and a direction we're really interested in moving. As I said, we really want to be the social infrastructure, if you will. And I think that in particular, I'm an avid user of Picasa web albums, and we have a lot of avid Flickr users here. And I think we're really committed to making those products work really well and kind of bringing in what I think is a really, really positive social experience on Facebook.com and integrating it with the really positive photos experience on those sites is something we're really committed to. And that's, as I said, some of the details that we're really trying to work through right now.
Right. I don't want to go too far down the rat hole of talking about Flickr and these kinds of media issues when we've got some very low hanging fruit here that I'd like to get to, such as right now you can't really have a conversation on Facebook. There are these orphan comments that I was at the restaurant with Cliff Garish a little while ago, and he got some sort of a comment on Facebook, and he was trying to find it on his iPhone, and he literally couldn't get to it. I mean, and then you've got this product that you used to have something to do with that right now is the only real technology that works on the network. So, where are we going to go with this, and how long is it going to take?
Well, obviously, I love friend feeds experience as well, but I also think that Facebook as a product provides a lot of different value to a lot of different users. The community that's formed on friend feed in all the countries that it's become popular, particularly the U.S., Turkey, and to some degree certain countries in Asia, are really using it as sort of primarily as a discussions tool. And I think that one thing I'm very realistic about at Facebook is it is a lot of different things to a lot of different people. It is like the functionality of profile navigation and photo browsing and photo sharing, and there's lots of other features of Facebook that make up the Facebook experience for a much larger Facebook user base. So I'm not sure I have like a great answer about where all these things ends up.
I'm not looking for an answer. I'm looking for just your take on what is the value proposition of real-time conversation, because you have the only tool that works. And yet it's not represented in the in Facebook.
Yeah, well, I think there's a couple of things. I mean, I think it's interesting that a lot of people are finally working on communication tools after I think a long period of relatively little innovation in this space. So there's sites like FriendFeed, there's sites like Twitter, there's Google Wave, and they're all experimenting with what I would say are quite distinct variations on this problem, but I'm hoping that, I'm not sure where all these things will end up because I think there are very different experiences, but I think that we will end up with a new set of user interface standards for real-time communication by the end of this. And there's a lot of complexity that goes along with that, like all the new protocols that get introduced as a side effect of these interfaces. But I think that we're in this period of rapid iteration and innovation. And as a consequence, you're seeing things like PubSub, Hubbub, and RSS Cloud, and sort of more technical, infrastructure related to this. And you're seeing a lot of different startups introduce lots of interesting user interfaces on top of these protocols. And so I think it's a period where it's worthwhile to just have a lot of people trying a lot of different things. And my hope is by the end of it, that this type of experience will be incorporated into all of our favorite products. Just like I think that there was this period in the Web 2.0 days where adding profiles and social features to a site was like a novel idea, and now you wouldn't ever go to a site that didn't incorporate some sort of profile and social features. My hope is that a lot of these real-time communication things just become ubiquitous and sort of the standard on which lots of products build. Again, I don't really know where we'll end up, but I think we're in that period of just iteration.
Right, but the things that Steve's asking for really aren't real time. They're like permalinks to the objects that we're talking about, the threads or the items. And also we need search. We need to be able to what we take it for granted on FriendFeed is I can search for every item that has the word Obama in the title that has 15 likes, and I can find things really fast doing that, and I can't do that on Facebook.
Yeah, I would say like I understand that there's some flaws with the Facebook stream product, but I do think that you've identified a couple of things I think are important. Permalinks, notifications, and other aspects that just keep you involved in the conversation are really important. And so those are the types of things that I think we're trying to figure out because permalinks are important and notifications are important. But one thing that people who installed the friend feed IM bot noticed is if you get the notifications wrong, you can die and like drown in a sea of instant messages.
Yeah.
So I just don't think that I agree with all the criticisms of the Facebook stream, and I agree with the criticisms of friend feed that I've heard, and that's sort of what I mean. I don't think this is a solved problem yet, and I do think that we will see some best practices come out of it. And when we do, I think a lot of platforms, including Facebook, will probably adopt a lot of those best practices. But I think we're in a healthy period of experimentation at the moment.
Well, go ahead, Robert.
One thing that people kept complaining about friend feed is that you didn't have control of who appeared on your screen, and that seems to be a fundamental difference between Facebook and Twitter. Twitter, I have complete control of who appears on my screen. If I don't want to see Steve Gillmor, I block him, and he does not show up on my news feed anymore. And I can do that on friend feed, but I can't quite do it on Facebook. Facebook, if I'm a friend with Steve Gillmor, and then you comment on Steve Gillmor's items, you show up on my news feed, right? And I didn't invite you there. I didn't ask to see you. You appeared for some reason, and that causes people to distrust or dislike, or causes them to see noise that they didn't.
I think that's actually an asset of the technology, but
it is in some places.
What's your answer, Brett?
Well, I was just going to say that I'm a little bit with Steve on this one. I don't think it's implemented perfectly today. Obviously, ideally, your stream would only show you those things that you actually wanted to see. And predicting that is imperfect and something that I think the team is really iterating on here. But one thing that I think our people's Facebook networks generally represent the real social networks. It's something that I think is fairly unique to Facebook and the whole world of social networks. And as a consequence, seeing people that are you're connected to through one level of interaction is probably disproportionately valuable on Facebook than compared to other networks, because it's probably someone you actually know or have heard of, given that your social network is represented more accurately here. And so I think if implemented correctly, it can be really valuable, because that kind of serendipity is something that is very common in real life. If you're having a conversation with your friend and they start talking about some article that their other friend told them about, that's like a completely normal behavior. And capturing that natural social behavior within a network like Facebook, I think has a lot of value. That said, I agree with you. Like it has to be implemented well, and it has to feel natural. And but I think that will come with a few design iterations.
So this will continue to be a fundamental difference between Facebook and Twitter going forward.
Hey, I'm just one person here, and I'm working on the platform, and you're talking about an area of the product that I use regularly, but I'm only peripherally involved in. So I can't say what I have a feeling the news team, anything you can think of, the newsfeed team would be willing to try, and I don't know which direction they're going to take.
It'd be interesting if we could just cut out the disclaimer and just go right to the answer.
I'm not working on it actively, so you're asking me what.
Yeah, so I was going to ask you about what you thought about Google Wave. Now, you don't need to have a disclaimer there.
Well, I'm even more biased there because Lars and Jens are two of my best friends. We worked on Google Maps together.
Well, all right. So instead of talking about friend feed, God knows why not.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Wave. They've got some problems in terms of UI.
Some problems. They put it into a stupid email interface.
Well.
We
know what Robert thinks about this.
I mean, I was talking about to somebody yesterday at the Twitter conference, and we both said, why didn't they just put it into an infinite loop or something? Some sort of super wiki, because there's a lot of power there that I want to get to, but I don't want to deal with the stupid UI of the email.
Well, I think that one thing that Wave suffers from is it's truly new. They really tried to do something that had never been done before, and they did it all at once. It wasn't, like an iterative change from some previous thing. And as a consequence, people go in there with certain expectations. I mean, some people go thinking this is the next generation of email, and they're comparing it to email. And some people hear it's kind of like Twitter for whatever reason. They go in and compare it to Twitter. And I think, if you talk to Lars and Jens, they're thinking of it as just, an entirely new sort of collaboration tool. And I think that's like I really respect the fact that they tried to do something completely differently. And in particular, one way that I've looked
I
at
guess my argument is I wish they had just freed their mind and gone completely differently and not tried to pull in the email interface, because I want to use it for the Gillmor Gang. I want to have a wave for the Gillmor Gang. It's magical to get 1,000 people all editing different parts of this continuous stream and putting in videos and putting in integration with live data sources and stuff. It's really cool technology, and if they had just simplified the UI so I could have one URL with one stream with permalinks for each item or each object on the graph there, it would be really cool.
But that's the thing, Robert. They're not individual items. They're edits to a document. So structurally, underneath, it's much more like a wiki than it is like a Twitter or an activity feed.
Yeah, but see, this is the modern world. Each piece on this new super wiki should have a URL so I can point to it, because already I have waves that are like 16 feet long, right?
I find it ironic, Robert, that you want a super wiki when that. How are you going to control that page?
There's no control anymore.
Oh.
Except on Twitter.
So we're back to 2 weeks ago rather than last week. We've been having this running dialogue, Brett.
You get to control Twitter, man. That's
how
where
to
your
control your
freaks
page
are going to reside.
I'm just running on Robert's Facebook page with SideWiki.
Yeah, see.
Exactly.
I don't even have control of Twitter, right? You can put SideWiki on my Twitter account, and then it's all over.
So, basically, Brett, this gives you some time in which to be able to figure this stuff out, because everybody else sucks even more, right?
Well, I want to say one thing that is, it's one thing that I have used Wave for that I found to be a really nice experience is just collaborating on a like a product spec. I sent out the Wave with like the initial version, and then we spent some time editing it together. And it was a smaller group of people, not 1,000. And I think that type of use case is perhaps one of the things they had in mind when they designed the system.
Right,
and it was a really unique and valuable experience.
That kind of augurs for a reasonable integration with Google Apps as opposed to necessarily the mail part.
Yeah, and again, I hope they do something like that. I think a lot of enterprises could get a lot of value from it.
All right, so what about friend feed? When are we going to start hearing about friend feed-ish stuff in Facebook? Forget the roadmap now. Now we're talking turkey.
That's fair. To me, one of the things I'm really excited with is opening up the Facebook platform more widely and more openly. The reason I'm excited about Connect and the Open Graph APIs, to me, it represents there's obviously the discussions part of FriendFeed, but also I think one of the things when we started FriendFeed we were really excited about was kind of like the social layer on top of the web, if that makes any sense, making all the sites you use a little more social. And to me, the combination of Connect and some of the products that we're working on is really realizing that vision at a much larger scale because of Facebook scale. And so for me, that's one of the most friend-feedy things I'm working on, and even though it's obviously a little bit unrelated to some of the discussions components of it. So I'm really personally really passionate about that, which is why I chose to work on the platform.
Well, as I was suggesting before, and I think you agreed with me that at least it was an interesting idea, if you look at the discussions part of FriendFeed as an interface that can be expressed through a window on a page. Once we get rid of the fan page thing, which I understand that the word fan is going to go away real soon now. So at that point, you've got sort of an iGoogle, only it's an iFacebook that you're beginning to develop. And so couldn't that, that aspect of the real-time chat be sort of integrated by itself and then migrated into the fuller API over time?
I absolutely hope that's technically possible. I think that's something we've thought about.
Okay, so what other pieces of friend feed are there? There's the aggregation.
Um, yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of what we're doing is not going to be translated directly, but I think like
Well, but the capability of being able to, I mean, the API allows us to be able to significantly model the routing of individual elements off the network. The
yeah,
things that Kevin is working on with the activity stream group in terms of finding, agreed upon standards for that friend feed and very little else allows you to do that today.
yeah.
So, how do we move that? I mean, obviously you're committing to at least for an unknown period maintaining that ability inside of the friend feed shell.
Yeah, so I mean, I'll just be perfectly candid here. The aggregation, like I think that the friend feed API was genuinely a positive thing. The aggregation components of friend feed have been a bit of a blessing and a curse for us because the level of intentionality of things that we aggregated varied widely. So some people would import, their Netflix, rental stream, and then someone else would import, their Facebook status updates. And obviously, the Facebook status updates were much more intentional, much higher quality, much more likely to be commented on or liked. And if you went and decided to queue 10 movies in your Netflix queue all at once, and it's spewed into your friend feed stream, that would be like most of our users would just complain about that. And so one thing that we're thinking like I don't think I want to like translate certain things on friend feed directly because I think that they were done in a way that like given if we had a chance to do them again we probably would do differently, and I think that one thing that we're thinking about is really focusing on the APIs and focusing on things like making sure that your Facebook experience represents really authentic user actions and really intentional things that they've shared, and so as a consequence like I think that a lot of stuff around Connect, the Stream APIs, the Open Graph API that we're working on. Hopefully, the sum of those really captures a lot of the value that you're talking about, even if the APIs themselves look a little different. Just because I do think that I'm really concerned that we don't end up with sort of the same user interface problems that I felt we ended up with on friendfeed.com.
Right. On the other hand, I hide a lot of things. Once
Yeah,
you,
well, unfortunately, with that was probably reasonable for FriendFeed, but as I said, Facebook has a lot of users with wide.
I understand. I understand the dynamic of moving from basically an early adopter, sort of leading edge kind of environment to one that is global and where you've got a lot of moms and pops and grandmas that just don't care.
Yeah,
But being able to translate those tools at the API level so that they can, so that people can. I mean, we're building on top of FriendFeed,
yeah.
and I'm certainly somewhat confident, less so from the last thing you just said, that we're going to be able to be able to exploit those things because I think that we were at a very early stage in terms of the people inside French feed and at the developer level of being able to harness tools, the discovery process of finding out what the value of what you had created, along with some of the workarounds that I can certainly understand you want to not perpetuate things that don't work well.
Yeah, so I certainly think that our goals are in line, and maybe it just comes down to getting the details right, so that the API is like the same level of expressivity that you're using today.
Okay, I think that we've been censored by the Facebook police, and your image is now frozen.
Well, maybe this is a good. I actually have to go in a couple minutes anyway. Do you want to just wrap up then?
Uh, Unfortunately, yes. No, I think we've gotten further than I actually thought we would in terms of getting you to talk about FriendFeed. So, uh, uh, bottom line, do you think that there's going to be a continued use of friend feed that is going to be viable to keep the lights on in terms of aspects like what I've called stream splicing that were talked about being introduced and seem to have been sort of lost in the cut of the acquisition? Do you think that we're going to see stream splicing?
It is something that actually Paul and I have been talking a little bit about, and I think it just comes down to how difficult it will be technically to introduce, because it is something I think is has a lot of potential value, but is also not applicable to a very large percentage of our users. So Paul and I have been actively discussing it, and I think it's very possible or even probable that we do it soon. But if it turns out to be a real technical headache, we may have to reconsider it. So we'll keep you posted on that.
All right, great. Robert?
With the stream splicing, it's about pages. The Facebook pages are still, I can't mix Oprah with Shaq's page in an interesting way, and that's what I think we're hoping you guys solve.
Oh, so I assumed that Steve was talking about this particular feature of the friend feed API that he's been asking for. Regarding the Facebook API, I think it is a really interesting concept, but it's obviously much larger in scope, and so it's something that I'm interested in, but I can't really say whether we will or won't do right now.
Okay, and Kevin?
Yep.
Any last questions?
No, nothing else comes to mind. I think we've covered a lot of good stuff. I'm encouraged to hear that you were interested in the activity stream stuff and these flow-based things that we're working on, because I think bridging it between these different places is going to be increasingly important, and it's great to see you bringing that experience from FriendFeed into Facebook.
All right. Well,
thank you for having me, Steve.
Well, as always, it's been a pleasure, and we'd like to keep holding your feet to the fire here as we move forward. I think it's important. I think when Paul finally went on FriendFeed and in the wake of MG's and Robert's articles about the death of FriendFeed, I think it soothed a lot of fevered brows, and I think it's important. It's a testimony to what you created, and also, frankly, as far as I'm concerned, a testimony to the fact that there's nobody else who's doing anything like it, and we certainly hope that that's going to be continued as far as possible at Facebook. This is Steve Gillmor. This has been the Gillmor Gang. I want to thank everybody who showed up, and I want to thank this TriCast was produced in association with our sponsors, Rackspace, and the TriCaster, which makes this possible, is a product of New Tech, and we appreciate their support as well. We'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.